Shri Ram, Shri Ram.
Offering my humble pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba, Om Sri Sai Ram, embodiments of unconditional love. I will present the first part of chapter 7 titled The Bridge. It is about Sri Rama and his army and their plans to cross the ocean to get to Lanka. They are in a quandary. It was a difficult situation. Vibhishana addresses Rama, Lord, the ocean owes its origin to your forefathers. If you just resolve that it should be crossed, the monkeys can easily go across. Rama ponders over this. In the meanwhile, a messenger sent by Ravana was recognized as a spy by Vibhishana. The monkeys bound him and took him to Sugriva, the leader of the monkeys, who orders that the spy be punished. It was ordered that his limbs be cut off. The messenger shouted in his plea for mercy. Lakshmana heard his pathetic cry and asked that he be brought to his presence. Lakshmana saves the spy. He hands him a letter to take back to Ravana and to implore him to surrender at the feet of Sri Rama. Sukha, the spy, rushes back to Lanka. At Ravana's court, he relates his encounter. The letter and the advice of Sukha only makes Ravana more angry and restless to attack the army of Sri Rama. Sukha interrupted with the words, Lord, what I just said is the full truth. Read that letter carefully and act without any sense of resentment or pride. Listen, give up the hostility you have developed. Rama is very tender-hearted and compassionate. He is the master of 3 worlds. If only you would approach him, he would take you under his protection and guard you from harm. He would pardon all your wrongs. Surrender Sita to him. Give heed to my prayer. The envoy pleaded plaintively for Ravana to save himself from ruin. Ravana expelled Sukha from the hall. Sukha fled to Rama's camp and sought refuge. Rama welcomed Sukha, who was overcome with gratitude and declared his life goal has now been reached. Rama was not succeeding in reaching a decision about crossing the ocean. He picks up his bow and arrow and was ready to release when he hears a voice from the ocean. The voice speaks about Nala and Nila, 2 monkeys who were targets of a curse pronounced by a sage. Nala and Nila, when they were young, took the saligrams from the sages and threw it into the ocean. The sages were enraged and said, Boys, may all things that you throw in the water never sink. This curse now can be used as a blessing. The voice of the ocean continued, Have your name inscribed in every slab and rock. Your name is light, not heavy at all. Thus, even huge mountain peaks, when thrown, would float and form a bridge. I will also contribute my share of help. For when the search is for truth, all nature must serve the seeker. Thus, with the name of Rama written on the stones, and Nala and Nila throwing them into the water, a bridge to Lanka was built in just 5 days. Vibhishana despite knowing that Ravana was going to meet his death in this conflict with Sri Rama, asks Rama to install a lingam to honor Ravana's dedication to Lord Shiva. Rama agrees, and the consecration ceremony is conducted by none other than Sri Rama. The monkeys first started to cross the bridge with Rama's picture in their minds and his name on their tongues. The scene is inexpressibly sublime. The presence of Rama, the ocean of compassion, led to the waves rise to catch a glimpse of Rama and frolic in joy. News reached Ravana that the enemy was at the gate, and he roared through all 10 throats in anger and hate. A curse has been laid on him long ago that if he used all 10 throats, his end will be near. He realizes too late and could not revert to using one throat. The first part of the chapter ends at this point. Thank you, Jai Sri Sai Ram.
Om Sai Ram. My humble pranams at the lotus feet of Swami. I'd like to take this opportunity and thank Swami for allowing me to do this discourse in his name and consciousness. It is now chapter 7, starting from page 88. This is where Mandodari tries to persuade Ravana to try and let go of his pride and his ego and take Mother Sita and at least go and offer it to Ram and prostrate before him and pray for his pardon. She says, and I quote, "Don't ruin your life and destroy Lanka and sacrifice the lives of its women and children. Persisting in your resolve to fight is not in line with the devotion and dedication to God for which you are so famous. If you hold fast to this horrid decision, even Shiva, whom you have pleased hitherto, is sure to give up. Good deeds alone can win the grace of God. How can God reward and appreciate this heinous act?" And Mandodari goes on to try and persuade him to try and let go of this and do the right thing by taking Mother Sita back to Ram. And of course Ram will obviously forgive him. Ravana, because of his pride and ego, decides to shrug her off and he walks away from the room. And he says, "Dear one, why are you so agitated? Where from did you get all this fear, the lack of courage? There is no one more powerful than I am in this world. The rulers of the 8 directions have been defeated by the might of my arm. Death dare not step near me. Don't yield to fear. You are exalting that weakling, Rama, in my hearing, unaware of the depth and the extent of my might." With these words, he left the queen and returned to the audience hall. At the audience hall, he is then confronted by his son, Prahasta. Prahasta also says the same thing. He tells him, "Take Sita with you now and surrender to her. Surrender her to him, praying for pardon. That step will save us and save Lanka. We can then claim that we have rescued our tribe from destruction. This is a triumph that we have achieved, or else face defeat and disaster. Get ready this very moment. Your renown will last as long as the sun and the moon endure. Then acquire a name that will be excreted as long as the sun and the moon endure." Now Ravana applied in dire anger and sheer bravado. He was trembling with rage at the unpalatable advice that his son is giving him. Raising his voice in a wild roar, he admonished Pratha to a torrent of abuse. "Fool! Who taught you this trickery? Where did you get this? Where did you derive such wisdom? They say sparks originate in bamboo clusters. You are born in my clan." Ravana gushed his teeth widely, shouted harsh and vulgar abuse, and finally kicked Prahasta out of the hall. Now the scene moves on to the night of waiting, where the monkeys, Rama, Lakshmana, all sitting at Sunila Hill. Ram appeared to them. He sat around them. He spoke to them. And then he spent the night with the monkeys until dawn, with delightful talk and pleasant companionship. When the day brightened, he had a bath in the sea, and he performed the prescribed rituals on the shore. He called Sugriva's ministers and other leaders and gave them instructions for the task ahead. And Sugriva, now Ram's envoy Angada, advises Ravana. Before that, Sugriva has nominated Angada, who is the son of Vali, to represent or to be the envoy for Sri Ram. And Angada then decides he's going to go to see Ravana. In there, Angada then rebukes Ravana and he says, "O Ravana, you and my father were friends of old, so with your welfare in view, I'll come at Ram's orders and give you a sound advice." He continues softly and persuasively, unable to withstand pride, lust, greed. You kidnapped the mother of all worlds, the daughter of Janaka. Well, let bygones be bygones, at least today, at this very moment. If you realize the fact of iniquity and act as I'm telling you, Ram will pardon you. Decide to do as I suggest without delay, or else in your own hand you will bury the clan of the kingdom. Here again, Ravana then says, "You vilest of monkeys, you're indeed a fool. Perhaps you don't know that I'm the foe of your God. What's your name? What relationship between me and your father? Don't be blinded to the consequences of your speech." Here again, Ravana decides to ignore all people's advices. And he decides, no, he's now going to go ahead and do what he has to do. And Angada still persisted. He wasn't scared. He still persisted on what he had to say. Angada also reminded Ravana of what Lord Hanuman did to him when he entered Lanka, where they burnt his tail, and he eventually brought the whole city down of Lanka. He burnt it to ashes. Then Ravana decides, then he brushes Angada aside and he lets him go. And then Ravana decides to trick Mother Sita. He calls one of the sages and asks him to make Ram's head with a bow and arrow. He takes it down to him and he shows to Mother Sita. Mother Sita for a moment was taken aback and I think she realized that this was real Ram, and then she realized, oh no, Ram can never be vanquished like this. Ram can never be taken with his head taken off like this. And she poured out the scorn and insults on Ravana. And she said, this dirty trick fails to deceive me. And of course then Ravana goes away. The good woman, which is Sarma, the wife of Vibhishna, comes to Mother Sita and consoles her and comforts her. And she said, Mother, Ravana is a trickster. And all that he does is subterfuge. No one can dare hurt Rama. Just now, he triumphantly entered Lanka with his monkey's horde. Our country, Lanka, is being shattered into shreds by the very shouts of the monkeys. Thank you, Jai Sai Ram.
Om Sai Ram, embodiments of love. Let us continue with the narrative, the story of Ram. In the quest to rescue Mother Sita from the clutches of the demon king Ravana, the dharmic forces of Lord Ram were outside the walled city which had 4 gates. A plan had to be formulated to breach the walls of the adharmic forces of Ravana. A council of senior personnel under the leadership of Ram met. In the meanwhile, Angada informed Lord Ram about the situation in Lanka and its preparedness for battle. Sugriva was the leader of the monkeys, Jambavan, ruler of the birds, Vibhishana, ruler of the demons, who was also the brother of Kumbhakarna. The dharmic forces were divided into 4 groups to begin the assault and lay siege. The 4 groups were blessed by Lord Ram. They were overjoyed to be on the side of the righteousness. The eastern gate was breached by the forces under Nala. The southern gate by the millions of monkeys under the leadership of Angada. Lord Hanuman led the forces through the western gate, whilst Lord Ram began the fight against Ravana at the northern gate. The dharmic forces rose as one, with them all voicing the name Ram, Ram continuously. The city of Lanka was thrown into confusion and panic. Ravana's foolish pride projected him forward, thinking of victory. The forces of Ravana fortified themselves strategically over the walls, turrets, and bastions of the fort. The cry of victory for Ravana was the clarion call, whilst the dharmic forces cried out victory for Ram, the Lord. The battle for supremacy raged on in 4 fronts, with the demons hurling rocks and boulders onto the monkeys whilst they tried to scale the walls of the fort. Fortunately, it did not harm them, for they were seized before it fell onto them. With the righteous forces, the demons began to flee and were terrified as many fled the besieged city as the combined forces of Lord Rama made inroads into the city. The population at large blamed Ravana for the chaos and mayhem that landed on the city. Ravana was enraged. He flew into the retreating hordes. The demons, being night creatures, their fury increased manyfold, shouting victory for Ravana. The monkeys were confronted by the demon generals Akampa and Atikaya, who threw their forces into darkness with their magical skills. Heavy rains of dust, stones, and blood were poured onto their enemy forces. Because of the pitch darkness, the dharmic forces were not able to distinguish friend from foe. When the plight was made known to Ram, he fired an arrow into the sky, which lit up the place. The triumphant yells of Angada and Hanuman were propelled the forces into the fray with renewed vigor and energy. With the battle not going too well for the demons, Malyavantha's wise counsel fell on deaf ears as Ravana was infuriated when he was asked to surrender to Lord Ram. Malyavantha was dismissed from the council chamber, knowing full well the downfall that was imminent. Meghanada assured his father Ravana that he will show his bravery in battle. The monkey forces had already laid siege to Lanka, but the demons that showed courage took to the streets in show of enraged anger and fought bravely, but to no avail. Meghanada took to the streets in his chariot, raining arrows onto the fleeing monkeys. At this, Lord Hanuman threw a mountain peak at Meghanada, who flew into the sky. But his chariot, his charioteer, horses were crushed under the might of the mountain peak. Meghanada devised numerous strategies to upset the invading forces, throwing the place into darkness once more when it was day, at which sight Lord Rama lit up the sky with another single arrow. By then, Lakshmana joined the forces with Hanuman in the field. Fighting was fast and furious, with many deaths on both sides. Lakshmana and Meghanada were involved in deadly combat. Meghanada's fearing for his life took up the deadly potent weapon, Sakti, which Brahma had given him. Lakshmana's heart was pierced by this weapon. He lay unconscious. Meghanada tried to carry the slain body, but to no avail. You needed Lord Ram's grace to lift the body of Lakshmana. Lakshmana needed a physician to tend to his wounds. Immediately, Sushena was brought to tend to him, while his entire house was airlifted with him in it from Lanka. Sri Hanuman had to procure the precious drugs from the Sanjeevi peak. This drug, herbs, would restore Lakshmana back to life. Meanwhile, Kalainami advised and counseled Ravana to surrender to Lord Ram as it was still possible to save himself. When Ravana refused his counsel, Kalainami, fearing for his life, left for the camp of the righteous. Kalainami was disguised as a sage, but Hanuman, upon learning of his true identity, twisted his neck and killed him. Hanuman, on his journey back from the Sanjeevi mountain, flew over Ayodhya, met Bharata. He filled him with news of his brothers and sister-in-law. With the assistance of the physician Sushena and the drugs and herbs from the Sanjeevi mountains, Lakshmana recovered in full view of Ram at his side. Meanwhile, reinvigorated by the blessings of Ram, the dharmic forces led a total onslaught on the forces of Ravana. Ravana sought help from his brother Kumbhakarna, who admonished his brother for the ungodly sin of stealing Mother Sita. However, he went into battle after meeting with his brother Vibhishana, who was fighting on the side of Ram. Kumbhakarna fought the leaders of the monkeys, namely Hanuman, Nala, Nila, Angada. They were no match for Kumbhakarna, who then caught hold of Sugriva and carried him off. When Sugriva then released himself from Kumbhakarna, bit his nose and ears, then the other monkeys joined in the fight against Kumbhakarna. Kumbhakarna was able to scatter them off with his mighty body. Rama arrived with a Kodanda bow, stepped into the battle arena with Hanuman, Sugriva, Jambavan. Lord Rama sent arrows into the hordes of the demons, who were either destroyed or fled into the four quarters of the fort. Rama then aimed a few arrows into Kumbhakarna, who then finally defeated, merged into Ram, and gained liberation. The chapter concludes with Lakshmana eventually defeating Meghanada. The brothers met and embraced each other. This concludes the events of chapter 8. Hopefully you've enjoyed the story and wait upon chapter 9 for further enlightenment and engrossment on the never-ending story of Ram and Sita. Thank you for listening. Jai Sai Ram.
Om Shri Sai Ram. I will be revising chapter 8 of the Ramkatha Rasavahini part 2. So in chapter 2, the forces of Rama decide to attack Ravana's city Lanka. The city has 4 gates, so therefore Rama divided his forces into 4, where there were both bears and monkeys. Rama decides to take on this battle, and he ends up getting an advantage on the battlefield, and this puts Ravana into a state of distress and fear. So he decides to call his courtiers to himself, and one of his courtiers is Malivanta, which is his minister. Malivanta advises Ravana to quit the battle and to surrender at Rama's feet. Whereas Meghanada, Ravana's son, decides to mollify Ravana and continue the battle. Now Meghanada actually does a lot of menacing tactics. He uses a lot of menacing tactics in this chapter. So Meghanada, to begin with, Lakshmana decides to fight Meghanada because he sees Meghanada as a very formidable hero. The fact that he was able to dodge Hanuman's toss of a mountain towards him and into the sky at such high pace and speed shows that he's a very agile, very strong, capable opponent. So Lakshmana fights Meghanada, but Meghanada successfully strikes Lakshmana in the heart using a special type of weapon called Sakti, which Brahma granted him. So while Lakshmana is on the floor, Rama goes into a state of despair now, and he says, we have to revive Lakshmana. So they call a physician who knows about medicinal properties from Lanka to their place, and Hanuman was the one who actually brought this person there. Then Hanuman, after taking Rama's grace, he decided to go to the mountain called Drona, or the Sanjeevi peak, to gather medicinal properties. So he gathers the medicinal herbs or vegetation, and he leaps into the sky past the mountain, where something actually quite special happens. Bharata sees Hanuman, strikes him down, and then Bharata and Shatrugna come to know about the battle that's happening in Lanka. But they decide not to go because Bharata knows that keeping the vow of Rama is more important, and protecting the kingdom of Ayodhya is even more important. Then Hanuman makes his way back to the battlefield. At this time, Rama is weeping a lot and grieving a lot for Lakshmana. But once Lakshmana was revived, Rama experienced Brahmic bliss that was beyond comparison. And this just showed that Rama extremely loves his servants. Rama loves his servants a lot, especially his brother Lakshmana, who was, was his brother, in fact. So this was quite a heartwarming part to look at. And we see that after this part, Meghanada decides to use many tactics. One tactic is that he decides to create a pseudo-Sita to try and trick Rama's forces. And this pseudo-Sita is actually a pretend Sita that he cuts in half into pieces to say, hey, we to kill Sita, this war is of no use anymore. Why will you continue fighting? Meanwhile, Rama was acting as if he didn't know this was real, but Vibhishana brought it to light that this is the kind of tactics demons use. Another indication was when Rama was struck by the sapastra that Meghanada threw at him, he pretended to get hit just to demonstrate the potency of that renowned dragon weapon, the serpent arrows. And what ends up happening is that Jambavan becomes very touched by this and takes the trident that Meghanada tosses to him and tosses it towards Meghanada, and Meghanada in his pride gets hit in the heart and decides to retreat and do a ritual in this lake. And while the ritual is going on, Rama's forces close in on him, and Lakshmana decides to finally end Meghanada's life then and there. So Meghanada tries to disguise himself, but Lakshmana he loses all of his calm, and he strikes an arrow at Meghanada's heart, ending his life. Now Meghanada, because he got to see Rama and Lakshmana, which was a great grace, and because of his bravery, he was extolled by Hanuman. Hanuman took him to a gate and left him at the city of Lanka's gate. And then at the end of it, Lakshmana prostrated at Rama's feet, indicating victory. And that is chapter 8 summary. Thank you so much for watching. Jai Sai Ram.